there's been this weird kind of throwback drama involving Team Liquid, and it's turned into a bit of a shit-flinging fest, which is, typical, really. Another typical occurrence in esports. This one involves a former coach, a current player and IGL, their wife, and now the CEO of the organization. It's all a bit of a mess. So, Team Liquid, as you know, they created a lineup that Muggins here said was going to be the best in the world, didn't he? Got that one wrong. I'm right more than I'm wrong, obviously. But in terms of when I'm wrong, I go fucking big. Right? That's how that works. Because, look, I could throw that 4-yarder, right? And, maybe we give it to a running back on 3 and we fucking get another set of downs. But if I see that fucking absolute launcher, I'm going for it. Right? That's just life. You got to go big or go home. I've always believed in that. And so, ultimately, this one's... It's not as bad as League of Legends will never be a successful game. That's probably the all-timer. That's probably the all-time wrong, because it literally became the most popular PC game. There was also, as well, I did say to Ninja, when he was a relatively unknown streamer, you're a mediocre streamer, fuck you. Then he was doing Super Bowl adverts. So, look, as I said, I've got some bangers in my history of being wrong. But when you're right 99% of the time, I don't mind that 1% being so spectacular. It's hilarious. So anyway, I said the Liquid lineup with Cadian and Skulls. I said, if all these pieces work out, it could be super exciting. Wow, and they've got Zews as a coach. Really rate Zews as a coach. Plus, he's back at Liquid. He's always been this guy that gets that kind of the NA mindset. He's always going to be experimental. He could work really well with Cadian. If all of the pieces align, this could be the number one team in the world. And then not only were they not the number one team in the world, they weren't even the 10th team in the world, or the 12th, or the 15th. They were shit. They were shit relative to S-tier standards, and clearly had all these personality problems and personality clashes behind the scenes. We were hearing stuff at events. I was hearing stuff coming, you'll never guess what's happening now. All of my spies telling me all of my shit. And I'm just like, yeah, it sounds like a fucking mess. And slowly but surely it dawned on me that, wow, that Team Liquid lineup is really going to struggle unless they can fix their problems. And then we woke up on that fateful day, Cadian benched. Everyone was like, what the fuck, Nani? It was like fucking, 4 or 5 months into the project or something. And that was the end of that. And then Twists was the IGL. By the way, I broke that story. I said to everyone that even though he'd been approached by Vitality and FaZe, he was going to stick around and be the IGL at Team Liquid and was going to go down that fucking classic star player, I know the game, I am the bag, listening to me route. More on that later. And it's sad because, listen, I knew Twists when he was a bit of a, I don't even know what you would call it, but let's just say a bit of a silly boy. Just a young NA player brimming with ego and getting involved in silly nonsense on the internet. And I watched him grow into a fine man and a great ambassador for our sport. Seems to be, for the most part, a very level-headed guy, super talented, exactly the kind of guy you would want on an organization. That's always great to see. It's always great to see people when they walk right up to the edge and go, I'm sure if I jump off, I don't have a parachute on, but I'm sure if I jump off this edge, someone will give me a parachute halfway down, right? And you go, no, that's not how that works at all. You will just fucking free fall until you hit the bottom. And when people go, all right then, yeah, I won't jump after all. You go, oh, great, that's a good story. You like that shit. And Twist definitely did that. Do I think he can be an IGL? Not really. It's not that he's not smart about the game. It's just leadership is something else. Leadership and being smart about the game aren't really necessarily the same thing. There's elements of one in one, but not necessarily the other way. And so anyway, I had my doubts. It hasn't been great. I did record a stream, and it was, I did a segment called This Liquid Ain't Solid, and it talked about this lineup, and it talked about Twists and Experience and IGL and all the other, and Ultimates and Experience. The problem was I never posted that video to my YouTube. It's uploaded. It's unlisted. But I never posted it. Do you know why? They had a brief flurry where Ultimate was popping off and doing really well. And then I was like, right, well, I'm not eating an L for that. Fuck that. Because what I said was right. It's just turned out to be wrong in the short term. But now it's right again. And I think to myself, I would have loved to have posted that video now, so I could have gone back and gone, what about today, dickhead? And we could have done the catchphrase, but whatever. You live and you learn. You know, I should have had the courage of my convictions there. And I did have a really good thumbnail for it as well, because Griff's a thumbnail genius. The smartest man in thumbnail technology. He's the Elon Musk. I won't say that. That's now loaded. That's a loaded term. But if I had my own team called Doge, wouldn't even be Doge, would it? What would it be? DO, the Department of Esports Efficiency. DOC, Department of Content Creation. He'd be right up there. He'd be like that kid that read that scroll, but only with thumbnails. Anyway, hello everyone. I'm just interrupting today's video to tell you about our sponsor, which is Incogni. Now, I'm sure many of you who are regular viewers will know that we've worked with Incogni before and they've sponsored content. But if you're new, I'm just here to tell you about what Incogni is, which is a personal data removal service. Now, I'm sure some of you will have noticed you get lots of spam emails offering you things, and you're like, why is this happening? I haven't signed up to any of this. Well, that's because there are entities called data brokers on the internet, and data brokers are companies that scrape the internet to find out any personal information they can about you. They then analyze this information and sometimes sell this data to third parties such as private businesses, insurance companies, financial institutions, even sometimes the government. And then you find yourself inundated with these offers, these emails, unavoidable spam. For people in the US, this can also include what they call people search sites, which is where personal information is available on the internet for those who pay a fee, often used by landlords or sometimes people for nefarious purposes. It can just be utilized by anyone. What Incogni does for you is it goes out and it finds where your personal data is stored, and then it asks them legally to remove them for you. This is a process which, if you were to do it as an individual, it would take up lots of your time, lots of individual emails. Incogni does it for you with a form and a click of a button. To give you an example, I remarked that I was getting lots of spam email, and I was wondering how it was happening, a little bit oblivious to the mechanics of that. I signed up to Incogni, and this will happen to you if you do the same. They sent me a report and showed me a list of every data broker that had my information, and it was over 70. And then, by filling in the form and clicking a button, they went and had all of that information removed on my behalf. What you'll get once you do that is regular updates, which will look something like this, and they will continue to do it on your behalf and continue to prevent it to happen as long as you're using the service. So if you find yourself having a cluttered email, or you're worried about your information being publicly available if you live in the US, you should sign up to Incogni. And if you do, please use my referral code, which is incogni.com/Richard. If you do that, you will get a 60% discount on Incogni, which will make it just $5.99 for the annual plan. Anyway, thanks very much for supporting the channel by doing that, and let's get back to the video. It turns out, long term, I was right. Liquid aren't doing particularly well. They're having some tough times. And Zews, a former employee who was part of that lineup, I thought was going to be number one, the coach, and then was let go in this great power struggle within the organization. He went on an episode of Snake and Banter. If you don't know, Snake and Banter is one of Thorin's million podcasts. And the format is, it's him and Maui Snake. He's the snake, Thorin's the banter. And they bring on a guest, and what you do is you do the good, the bad, and the ugly point for that particular week. And each one does a good, each one does a bad, each one does an ugly. And so they had Zeus on. Now, Zeus, obviously someone I respect. Consider him a friend, really. I mean, we're just being honest about it. Cards on the table. He's a nice guy. He's the rarest of things. A Brazilian that likes me. Think about that. It's like a fucking unicorn. And anyway, you know, I've got a lot of respect for his perspective. I think at some point you have to self-reflect. If you ever don't he's had a couple of high profile failures now, and in the same way, the community doesn't give grace to Kassad, even though he achieved incredible things for Oceanic Counter-Strike and what he was able to do with the 100 Thieves Renegades lineups. No one cares about that now, and they just go, yeah, well, you didn't win the major with Bleed, so fuck you. And so Zews obviously had a number of kind of high-profile, flops. I think he was the coach over at Fluxo at one point, and it's kind of funny seeing Maui on a podcast with Zeus because he used to light Fluxo up. But anyway, Zeus goes on Snake and Banter. He gets asked his bad point, and then he just fucking tears into twists about not being a good IGL. One of the most just out of nowhere, like it was Randy Orton. It was RKO. It was out of fucking nowhere. And anyway, what I'm going to do, this is why I get to take a break, I'm going to play you part of the segment. And what it is, it's ultimately a tell-all about what was going on at Team Liquid at that time and why he doesn't think Twists is going to make a good IGL. Now, I'm sure Thorin isn't going to mind me playing a bit of his podcast in what's going to be a YouTube video on me, but I usually don't do Thorin's content, but with this one, it's relevant because it all goes back to Thorin. Like, if Zeus hadn't gone on this podcast and apropos of nothing just dropped all of these bombs, we're not having this conversation. And ultimately, it's got to a very strange place. I mean, some of the allegations, because look, I keep it real. I think there was some stuff that should have stayed off limits. I think locker room talk, really, I don't like it when it spills over, I think some things have to be sacrosanct in the world of sports. But it's out there now, and it's caused a bit of a kerfuffle.
Had a lot of good thoughts, like my little brother kind of thing, right? Had teaching him how to go and things like that. And with the help of us, because he's so good, we went from being from the goals of trying to be the best, we ended up getting NAF. We got Steel and Taco who came in, right? But we went not only being NA's best team, we became the number 2 best team in the world, only losing to the Australis, as we were mentioning. So we built a lot of repertoire within the team, and kind of like we were talking about Ash now, it was like a really cool building something, because to get into a position like that is so rare in the scene. And so for anybody watching, getting what the future might be, you have to eat a lot of shit. You have to eat the part of the shit sandwich, right? When you're talking to players, how you're going to do this thing. You actually just have to, that's kind of how life is. But you once get there, and things were actually looking really good, right? I received high praise for being the best team, and I heard something there where it's I heard that I was not only the best coach Liquid had ever seen, but it was across all esports, not just CS.
Okay.
And Liquid, from the people who are more in the know, I think everyone knows, is gigantic.
They were one TI, everything, yeah.
That not only the structure, the way they work. I as a coach, I had I was starry eyes as well, with what I built there, and hearing that, of course, proud, everything like that. But like I said, I'm fucking crazy. And again, this time I got homesick, and I left the number 2 team in the world, in which I had built, in which I had brought the players on myself, in which I had equity in the company. For those who didn't know, for small micro equity, kind of like what Elish has, but that's how much they believed in me, right? So very special place in my heart. So why did I tell this entire long story of how I got here? First is for Maui, I remember a lot of the criticism you even asked me, oh, what do you think? I'm at the time, of course, you know how esports is. You can't say everything that's going on. Got to protect players, got to protect the org, but it's the story doesn't go like that. How does it go? And this, I swear, this all leads to twists, and it's not something not trying. Yeah, no, I'm saying for the public. I know how people go, and right. So when I was here, I was already retired. The Fluke thing, I agree that wasn't a good team. I again had only one job there, which was getting them to the major, and was fired after because became too expensive for him. But Liquid, Joka calls me, dude, what do you think about joining Liquid? Again, special place in my heart. I didn't hesitate. I didn't care who the roster was, what was going to happen. I'm I'll join this. I'll do it. It was supposed to be a weird roster, and then I hear it could be an amazing roster. So, but point of correction one, which I think is important, is the roster was already being built. They already had or the talks with Cadian, with Russ, with Yakinder, and Naf was already there. Naf wanted to leave, but he wanted assurances that for the player to stay, right?
Right.
So I'm coming into kind of a chaotic scenario, and one of the first things that I have to do, in a sense, is convince Russ to get on the team. And that's kind of why I'm hired by Liquid, right? They remember, I helped build that roster and everything that happened. And I do this while being 100% trying to be genuine and good to Russ. Like, cause like while all this is happening, for those who remember, FaZe was winning 3 finals, right? Like shit was going crazy, and I can only imagine what was going through little dude's head at the time, right? Like he wanted to leave, contracts ending, orgs fucking him, good friends there, but wants to go to Liquid. There's history, there's potential on the roster, things like that. In the in the end, left the choice entirely up to him. Just of course said what I thought and what I believed in. He asked me for advice as a mentor, as he mentioned at the time, and I gave it to him honestly. And I didn't know if he would come, but somehow he ended up choosing to come to us. And in Liquid, everyone was like, "Zeus, you did it," blah blah blah. But I'm happy that I did it in a way where I maintained like the values and things that I believe, right? Not trying to spin a narrative of pure, it's just something that I tried to look for. And things keep going. And so I didn't build a roster. And then for the skulls point, because all of this ties into how what
Now, just before we get into this, obviously, for a bit of additional context, there was this huge thing. Like, Skulls, by the way, has gone on to look like a really solid player. When he was brought into Liquid, he was being earmarked as the next big thing out of Brazil, and he had all this potential. And there's been this huge disagreement about who was responsible for it. Because of the Brazilian connection, people thought it was Zeus. Zeus has maintained it was Twists. The org maintains no player makes roster changes. No player or coach would make roster changes. Everything has to go through Joker Steve. We just take advice and feedback, and then we finalize what we think is going to be a good roster. No one's ever took ownership for the Skulls deal because it was a purported $600,000 move where everyone was like, that's too much for a up-and-coming Brazilian player. Although I will tell you, if you know anything about the Brazilian scene in esports, they treat it like sports in the sense that every contract has to have a buyout. And so what they do is they set inflated buyouts like they do for the footballers. So you have to pay over the odds to get the talent out. It's how they make money, essentially. It's one of the additional revenue streams that Brazilian orgs look to leverage to stay afloat. Anyway, so the whole Skulls thing has been laid on Zeus's doorstep. I think generally that's been the kind of community consensus, and I think it's always been a bit of a bugbear because it didn't work out. They ended up selling him, and a lot of people blame Zeus for it, saying Zeus was a grifter. He basically got one of his friends a fucking cushy job, and this is why I think he wants to get a lot of this off his chest.
what leads us to today. But to make this roster happen, right, to get it in, we had to lock in a player. And it was really important for us to have the NA spots, right? It wasn't a necessity 100%, but let's just say it was very heavily.
You couldn't sign an
favored,
EU
right?
player,
Like,
yes, yes.
yeah, it would be very, very favored if we were able to go there.
Yes.
And there's very few options. JKS was there, but we didn't want and Brazilian following. You're here, all that, and then
Yeah.
this whole thing's coming. We'll talk. I can't say the value in itself because of contracts and that org pain is just a pain in the ass. They try to fuck that kid, so fuck them. But they were like, it was an expensive amount. But when you factor in that amount for the org, it's cheap because you're not paying for Skulls, you're paying to get Cadian and Twist and Nav to resign. So you're maintaining a lot, and they're subsidizing that cost and heavily on salaries, right, for the player. Removing that pain is being a dick, and removing some parts from his winnings from Major, which is a shitty Brazilian thing that people do that just pisses me the fuck off. But that's the country I live in, and the organizations here, while I like the players, a lot of them are fucked up, but that's a
Turns out Zeus will never understand either, and he's Brazilian.
whole different story and thing, right? But we get him, and it's because Russ said, like, if you give me Skulls, well, so I even said, like, here, not anyone knows this, and this probably might get us flack, but it was what it was. Like, on the last day of the Skulls thing, we got wind that Nerds was available and on the market. It's like, holy shit, it's Nerds. Look what that kid's doing. That kid's a fucking monster. But at that same time, now we had gotten commitment from Twist. We had gotten Skulls there. Like I said, it was a gigantic fight with Cadian and Nav.
So just in case you missed that, what he's essentially saying is we could have had Nerds earlier, and we could have had him instead of Skulls, and that was a miss for Liquid, and Zeus is saying that's what we could have had, and ultimately we ended up going this direction, but it wasn't me that was driving it.
And so management and myself come to the conclusion that we can't risk it all because we'd lose everything, and it was past registration times. We had already sent it in on things like that. Again, unfortunately, one of the shitty aspects of esports. But we were supposed to be fine. blow number one that we get to the story, somehow we fucked up our roster signing and we had to start from zero because we had the core three players, but we didn't substitute OC rightly. I don't know
Oh,
100% the rules. So we were supposed to be in Katowice, supposed to be in all this shit, blah, blah. There could be a thousand things that were going on, excuses. But so our team grew frustrated, but it comes to the point now about Russ, right? Our team there, we had a big problem of personalities. Everyone of the media rightly criticized and I guess speculated that there would be too many voices going in that team. And they're right. There are a lot of voices, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just there's experience and things going on. But we forgot kind of an important aspect that with these personalities and all these things, not necessarily sometimes like what people are saying or what they are doing is what they mean, right? So we had the whole retreat. Everything was beautiful. Like see the videos. Like we actually had a lot of fun there. I felt so bad when I heard afterwards that some people, oh, we shouldn't have gone to the retreat and things like that because the reasons that are being said publicly aren't like the real reasons. They're like, oh, we wasted time. Like bullshit. We liked time there. It's just things changed afterward. And why did things change? So I'll open up. Like I'm gonna so forgive me if I get the dates wrong. But it's gonna be a rough guesstimation,
Yeah.
right? Memory sometimes fail. Like 3 weeks before the RMR, I don't know why. I remember I had to be in I was at the Liquid offices, but I had to be in my room. I think I had removed my tooth and ran back to go to scrims. And I get back and chaos is breaking hell in the team speak from what I see. Yelling's going on. There was a fight. As you can imagine, it was Russ and Casper. And I'm trying to calm down. I thought it was a fucking joke, whatever it was. But it's my job. I'm supposed to be there and do. But it gets like bad. There was yelling. There was yes. It was so stupid. I swear. Like I said, I thought it was a joke, but there was yelling shit like that. I set up a meeting. How I am. We're gonna try to solve this shit. And kind of, I blame a one key moment, but that's one of the moments that things start going. We didn't really find a solution there, and we didn't find a solution because we couldn't talk, and a lot of that goes because Russ couldn't find a way to talk to Casper honestly to actually figure shit out. And I'm like, after the meeting ended, we called CEO, we had like management, psychologists, like all that shit, like way bigger deal than it should have been, honestly, even looking back. It was like we couldn't get to the point. And from there, honestly, it's hard for the team to move forward, right? It's not an excuse for anything, but communications didn't start. We our captain when we want to talk to our star player, and Russ was sort of the leader for everyone because he's the one that, again, when he signed, everything was officialized, right? So
Yeah.
Skulls was there because of him. Kaden was there because of him. I
Yeah.
was there because of him. Like all this shit. So that's when things got funky, but it wasn't to be. Like, of course, it's a long, slippery slope, and right, things go like that. So all right, RMR goes. We fucked up. I'm not even gonna go like a weird format, but we fucked up. We had to, like, we were the clear favorite for that. And right before that, I had heard in the meeting, like there wasn't a board meeting going on, and Liquid does this thing, really cool thing in the office where they want everyone to participate, and they're talking about our team, and their Liquid really had high hopes for our teams, right? And I got another praise there, and this is something that I'm still going to be proud of. I don't know, like after the day, I'm going through this entire process while I'm here with you guys. But it's like I remember hearing again then CEOs of the company saying Zews, the guy, is responsible for building our Grand Slam roster, and I was super proud of that because that's something they never said out loud
Right.
before.
Right.
And everyone's gonna be like, "Why is that?" Because even when I was leaving Liquid at that time, like my first time, I told them to get Stewie because he would be the right fit. They wanted to get
Right.
Tarek, and they ended up getting Tarek. Tarek was lazy. I don't know what the fuck he did. They got Stewie. They saw I was right, but like even then, I tried to do always the best thing for the organization because I had such high regards for it. So after hearing that we fucked up in the RMR, I'm asked to do kind of a PR thing internally. That's fine. But from there, my recommendations are like either we solve this shit right now, right? Find the news, turn the leaf, all that psychology shit that we were running at the time, or we have to do something. And I know people like Russ could not confront Casper, and I'm not saying like, oh, it's all, but like he could not confront. It's because he couldn't even say what it was. So how could we have resolution when Casper wouldn't even know what it was? And that's not to excuse Casper. He's done a lot. Like he was weird there and a lot of shit, right? But still, it's all in conversation that's supposed to be had, and that kept going. But so it just got to a point where I'm like, okay, this is not going to work out. I have to make a recommendation for Liquid as my position. I do kind of that same assessment that we had with the Liege and Nitro in the days, and I'm like, this is going like this, and I give my assessment. My assessment is kind of in line with where we were. I'm like, Scholes was the thing, but he bought us time. I think he wants to go to Furia. I think we can make a deal there. He's probably the best Brazilian player still. We can make the money back in that sense and like space it out over major payment. Let's be smart about it, do all that shit, trying to find a substitute. But when it comes to the important part, it's like, Casper, dude, I actually love the guy. I think he's very energetic. I told him this in the beginning. I think he was one of the better leaders I've ever worked with, like like inspiring. And it's small details. Like Russ doesn't know how to play like ping pong. He'd go there and catch the paddle. No, so I'm like, I'm half broken with this shit because I know what I have to do. Right? It's my job, and I got to remove my emotions and my things from middle and be neutral and be great. So I recommend that Casper go out, but because we're never gonna have a team that follows him at this point, like I used to have a saying, I used to say this about Fur, but it goes like again here, it's like one bad apple will contaminate the rest, and it's like it's really hard to go the other way around and kind of like get that guy back. And so I recommend that we're moving forward. No, then Liquid's like, let's wait, let's try it out a little bit. And even then, this is probably where my fair shit starts kicking in. I start going like, I'm starting getting fed up because I see that we're not saying what's the reason. It's like, oh, I don't like your calling. Oh, I don't like this. And the reason when I know is like because Russ has told me that he doesn't not me. He told us that he doesn't like how Casper is as a human. That he does some shit. I'm like, you dislike the guy on a personal level, and you can't even tell him that. So how the fuck are we gonna do this shit, right? It's a clusterfuck. And so it goes like that. And then the recommendation, and then I'm going into much detail just because I think it like the specifics are important here, at least in how I remember it. We're going, and then we go and we have a good tournament in China. So Casper was basically already out there, but then China was amazing. The crowd was fun. Everything's working well. We get the team. Like I improved my methods of working with them because they weren't happy as well with that in the moment. Because they weren't happy because me and Casper also couldn't work. That's why I said like honestly, that's why I know Casper has fair shit because I couldn't work with Casper either, but it was for different reasons, right? Like because I was trying to fix. But anyway, so China works a little breath of fresh air. Things are going okay. Hey Russ, how we doing? Oh, maybe we can work this out. Maybe we can go.
So this is where it's about to take a fucking turn because so far now, up to this point, I'd say a lot of the focus has really just been on that Twist and Katie and can't vibe with each other, and ultimately, like I kind of get it. You know, like, look, I like Cadian. I've known Casper a long fucking time. And he's just a forthright dude. Like, you can either fuck with that or, like, he wants shit to be done in a way that he wants it to be done. Like, and if it isn't, he's gonna say so. And he's just, like, a passionate guy who fucking wants things done his way. And some people like that, some people don't. He also tramples on feelings all the fucking time. He just doesn't give a fuck about that kind of stuff. He thinks he's like a little bit different to Blame F, but ultimately there's one thing they have in common, and that is like they view a team as a professional environment, and they view it as like, look, I have to be able to like offload on you and tell you what I think you're doing wrong, or if you're not doing something up to my level, my specifications, and you've got to be able to suck it up and do it. There's an attitude with a lot of players. They're not really looking at it like a job. They're looking at it like they want a strong bond, and they want, they want all the relationships to be, they want vibes as well as an understanding on the server. Some people don't really care about the vibe aspect, and Cadian's like that. He's also very... he's also a type of IGL that like he will micromanage at the start of a round, but he wants you to have some sort of mid-round autonomy, and he gets very frustrated if people don't show that. So ultimately, I can understand why him and Twists might clash, and that's kind of what's been going on here. But this is where Zeus ultimately, who, if you recall, by the way, when he did his exit interview with HLTV after it was revealed he was going to be leaving, he said, like, look, there was these problems, and other players on the team have to take a look at themselves. And obviously, he was referring to Twists, and we'll kind of get into that now.
But I still don't think so, blah, blah, blah. Go to the next event, like, okay, talk. Go to the next event. This is Pro League. And this is kind of like closer to the end of the story where we're going. Like in Pro League, we did all right, but not well enough. But most of us got the feeling that not a real chance was given there, but also some other shit happened that this I don't want to get into. But like, okay, it's official. We're gonna go. We have a like Russ gives us an ultimatum on the rooftop. Like, oh, either this happens, like he's gotta go, and we're probably moving on close too. Maybe he wanted to move on after. I'm like, you're fucking insane. Are you kidding me? Like, no, that can't happen. Blah blah blah. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's a big story, guys. Trust me. It's a dude. This is gonna be a fun episode. I hope you either
Okay.
love it or
Yeah.
hate it. Yeah. So okay, we're gonna move on with this. I get back to the Utrecht facility. We're there, and get a call from Joka. Hey, Russ wants to go to Vitality. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm gonna have to do this shit, and like this gets going with it. Like, no, let's do. I have to again, like 8-10 hours talking, thinking how I'm gonna talk to this, how I'm gonna approach. Like, that's what I believe coaching is, and people should know that because that is part of the job of coaching is keeping your like team together. Liquid tried to buy Breezy and Cirque at the time. I had to stop it from happening. Random thing, but like that's how you have to do your job. That's part of the job that people never see. So all that we have, I'm like, Jesus, Rez, you can't do this. Like, you're asking to be captain of the team. You're doing all this shit. We're making all these moves, looking at all these people. Like, we're already committed to do this shit, and like you're saying you want to leave now, and you're not actually. He's not even saying he wants to leave. We heard from other people because we have to keep our ears to the ground and that shit. All right. So like, oh Jesus Christ, no, I'm sorry. Blah blah blah. Fine.
And by the way, just to let you know, as the premier esports journalist that was in all of Evil Genius's shit, and just generally at that time was like getting all sorts of stuff sent me. That Breezy and Cirque thing is legit. That was an explored option in 2024 for Team Liquid, which is another reason why I can't believe Joker Steve still has a job. It's mind blowing to me, kind of how far away from being an S tier pickup that would have been. It's fucking insane that nearly happened. I mean, listen, I don't want to say it was like close to happening, but it was certainly one of those things where it's like, hey, we can get these players, on the cheap essentially. So, just madness.
Go to that. Then that night, go to the lobby to have a few beers. Me, Yakinder, and Twist. Twist sits with the FaZe guys. Whatever, having fun. I invite his fiance to have a drink with us. We're just talking there. Russ disappears. He's like, go find Russ. I try to search for him in the bathroom. Can't find him. Blah, blah, blah. Can't do it. After a couple hours, I'm like, go to the FaZe guys. Oh, he's talking to those guys. Anyways, why do we get here? Oh, he's blabbing to the FaZe guys about every fucking thing that's going on. Welcome to Esports 101. When people have a drink, shit's going to explode and go off the roof.
Yeah.
Also, another esports classic. So what Zeus is alleging there is that basically, like, Twists went back to the FaZe. He had a couple of beers with his team, left his team, went to the FaZe guys, started saying, "Listen, I miss you." Talking to your ex or whatever. I got all this shit going on in the team. I really thought the grass was going to be greener on this side, and it isn't. And again, that's just something that happens in esports all of the time. I mean, me and Duncan have probably told a million anecdotes to this effect on by the numbers down the years. And obviously, the classic is the fucking with the French players, where it's like they literally would just you would just come in and your teammates would be talking to the other fucking teammates that they're not meant to be playing with, particularly like, Shocks and MBK never really vibed and stuff like that. So, but I mean, another way to look at it is, I mean, he didn't leave in acrimonious circumstances. He's obviously spent a lot of time on FaZe. I know Carrigan's just a cool dude, so like he's obviously going to have good relations there. So he could have just been talking to his homies. But the problem is when you then later understand that there was a potential for Twists to go back to FaZe, this isn't a good look, to be fair.
So I'm like, okay, time for Big Daddy Zeus to go there again. Let's have another one. So we move places where there's no other fucking players, go have a conversation. We're like, dude, I'm like, okay, dude, at this point, I've already made a commitment. Like, Casper's going to be out. Like, the relationship there is now stranded to a bad point. The team is kind of here. They're not happy, but like, they're okay. They believe that Russ maybe could do it, maybe can't. But like, depends on who we're going in. We start looking at really good options, like number one in the world player options. And that's another thing in Liquid that is like so hard to get players and shit like that. But sidetracked. So, talking to him there, probably the biggest thing. And looking back, honestly, that's kind of where I feel my time ended. Because in that conversation, we're talking about the future, and he's just like, Zeus, I'm getting the feeling from you that you want to be involved in the building of this team. And again, I'm the guy who will always say what you want, not what you want to hear, what you need to hear, and what's the truth. I'm like, yeah, of course I want to be involved. That's kind of like my job. I built that roster. Like you were my first hire. How the fuck am I not going to be involved in this? And from there, things change. He's going to say that I don't know what else happened, and seemed like it was fine. Hey, Joe, we good? Yeah, we good. Let's do this. I find a sponsor for like potential sponsor for like $2 million to try to get the number one in the world player. Things good. Yeah, arrive in Brazil. So Russ doesn't want, you're out. So same thing he did. Casper did to me. Couldn't say anything. Right. So yes, I'm
Okay.
exposing everything here, not in spite, but how does it relate to my point and to my story? One, just on a personal level, I really wanted to get this story out because it's been 6 months, and even I've been doubting myself. And while I tell the
Right.
story, while I'm sad at Russ, I'm disappointed as I told him, I'm angry, but I'm also more pissed at Liquid because look at the story that I had there, and they threw away like I was wrong for my thing, and I believed it for a long time. But I just know what isn't right. Like clothes is performing, the things are there. The Joker was put in that position. And the sad thing is, like, when I was leaving, I even heard Naf, no, I thought we were great. Kinder, I thought we were great. But Russ wants to do this. Close is out and Casper was out. So it's like, oh, it's obvious where it's coming from and things like that. Then I hear from management, it's like, yeah, but I'm scared for my job too to stay here and shit like
Right.
that. I gotta make it work. So
Sure.
like even the organization loses power, right? So it's a shitty. So the conclusion to all this, yes, it's a shitty story. It's a big story, but also I don't think he's gonna be a good leader because leadership is leadership. It's you have to talk to people. You have to be straightforward. You have to convince them. A good leader has people that follow them because you make sense, not because it's forced or because it's my way or because I like blind followers really doesn't work in my humble opinion. Russ is probably the best skilled fragger I've ever seen. He's insane. I think even through all that shit, I used to think he has good intentions. I don't know where that is now. Forgive and move on, kind of forget and move on, kind of that thing. But not a good leader. And for Liquid, I don't think Liquid's ever going to be a top 8 arena team, as my hot take here for the bad point, because with leadership you need consistency, right? He's going to be able to call good strats. He's knowledgeable, but he's not going to be able to lead a team. And if we look, Spirit, Eternal Fire, these guys are kicking ass. They're a really like knit group of players that are working together and have all of that. Like I said, everyone has skill, everyone has team play. The extra Weiss Kerrigan bottom fragging, one flicking highlight, and there every time because it's a fucking fighter mentality and knows how to deal with people. So that's my gigantic ass points, boys.
Okay.
So, obviously, as I said, that's apropos of nothing. That's obviously something Zeus felt he had to get off his chest. I imagine it's frustrating when you're a coach and all of a sudden you are plunged into the fucking wilderness. You've had relationships break up. I mean, as he set the scene at the start of the long clip, he was saying, look, it wasn't like this was the first time I worked with Twists. We worked together on the Grand Slam Team Liquid lineup, one of the best lineups ever assembled in modern Counter-Strike. Had a very unique and exciting style. They just couldn't beat Astralis ultimately, like a lot of teams couldn't. And, oh yeah, by the way, that's awesome. It looks like he's pulling the Anton Chigurh face, isn't it? It's fucking great. I'm sympathetic, but I will say there's some parts of this I wouldn't have brought out, and it goes on. There's some of the little bits and pieces, like about the whole they could have had Donk and stuff like this potentially. Which look again, I don't know how true that is, but I can say that initially when Donk was coming through, Team Spirit said it's not beyond the realms of possibility we could sell this guy, and people were making inquiries. It was just nobody wanted to pay like 1.5 million or whatever the fuck it was for a player that was a kid from Russia and completely unproven at that moment in time, But it was like people. That was the other hilarious component of NIP saying, "Well, he came out of nowhere." It's like, no, he was like a Munisi. People were tracking him for a long, long time. So anyway, it's this kind of spilled over onto Reddit as these things do, and naturally, it kind of ended up generating a lot of negative responses. As I said, my thoughts are this. It's not just that I don't think necessarily Twists can be an IGL, because I know how hard being an IGL is. And as I said, and Snappy's absolutely on point. It's 70% of what you do is off the server. Honestly, the 30% I've seen on the server doesn't look great. But it's also what we've lost because the Twists as a fragger is fucking crazy. He's a cracked, talented player. And the window on how long he can be that guy for is getting smaller and smaller and smaller with each passing moment. I just wish they would cut just an average and fucking bring in Shuhei. By the way, if you watched the episode of The Four Horsemen we did with G2's current CEO, because this has like been a weird week. It was a week where we interviewed the current CEO and I interviewed the former CEO. But if you watch that, I literally start the episode by the way, before we went live, I told him to get Shuhei. At the start of the episode, I told him to get Shuhei. And then at the end of the episode, I said, get Shuhei, right? Like, just do it. I don't give a fuck what went on at Mouse or whatever. You're getting a generational IGL talent, and you're locking up the IGL talent spot for potentially 4 years minimum with someone that's going to work with multiple lineups and probably win you some trophies. Just do that. Anyway, so this spills over onto Reddit. And what happens next? Twists himself hasn't responded. What ended up happening, funnily enough, was his wife, because people have been saying girlfriend, they are actually married guys. Which, by the way, look, I think that does kind of change the dynamic a little bit. Again, I don't really know about bringing wives into it, because there's some other stories that come out. As we'll get to. And she sort of did a point-by-point reply of some of the things, some of which I haven't played to you, because it's already a long segment. When it said, Zeus is still stuck in 2016. Saying to remove Ultimate and add Shuhei shows how little knowledge he has. I mean, yeah, for me, it would definitely be JKS, but whatever. He's still butthurt he got removed. He was not up to date at all, which he admits. On top, he was lazy. Russ never pushed for Skulls to be on the team. Zeus brought him in and wanted him on the team. The yelling, which you heard him talk about there, between Russ and Cadian was one-sided. 2, Russ defended Skulls, and Cadian completely freaked out. Zeus lies about what the actual problem was with Cadian, which this is a fucking... That's ominous, so what does that mean? You can't just sort of leave that one there, but whatever. Russ was not talking to the FaZe guys at Pro League about stuff at Liquid. He talked to Carrigan privately about what he thinks about Russ becoming IGL. Russ didn't ask Zeus to be part of the roster in the future. Saying Liquid will never be a top 8 arena team because of leadership is such a weird take, since he doesn't know how Russ is leading, and also he only became IGL in August last year. Lying about the NBA tickets, Russ didn't buy tickets for him, Rops, and Carrigan. It was Russ, Rops, Brokey, and me going, and he didn't hype up the team. This is about there was like something where he bought NBA tickets and went out with the FaZe guys, and I think someone was saying, Russ supposedly asked Team Liquid to pay for them as a treat, but like it's all bullshit. I don't know. Zeus lying again. No one said they wouldn't play with Donk. Donk didn't speak English at the time. Lamau. Now some of this passes, some of it doesn't. Some of it is wife defending husband, which you would expect. A lot of it's tit for tat, and he said, she said. But also, I mean, put it this way, any intimation about how involved she might be, I will say you're not really beating any of the allegations if you're putting out the statements, and Twists is not addressing the interview, which I just wouldn't address it at all. I think that this is something you kill with silence. You just say, if that's Zeus's take, let him have it. We're going to work and focus on what we're going to do in the here and now. And it's kind of interesting because in the aftermath of the response from her, Zeus did end up walking some of it back in a now deleted tweet, which nobody archived, but fortunately someone copy-pasted it on Reddit. First, I'd like to apologize to Anir for blurting her name in this episode. She's never been anything but nice to me, and it was wrong of me to say that, as it was unwarranted. I did this episode on an impulse. It's not always easy to get every thought and detail out correctly, So let me address these. Hey, maybe I do hate how I made that part about my first experience too long and forgot to mention the main point of it. When I was hired, I was specifically asked not to touch the CS tactical aspect, as we more than had that covered with KD and Yakindar and Twists. So it was just trying to point out that I was asked to do the same style of job I was doing in my run. Hence, one of the first asks was to close on Twists, which I tried to do in the best way I could without violating our respect. I mean, come on. Lack of creativity much. The Liquid Grand Slam roster, which Russ was a part of, was built with 2 hybrid AWPers in Stewie and Nitro, only getting it as needed or per map. Even Zews doesn't buy the AWP as much and relies on the AKs nowadays in CS2, added on top of the donk peak. I think it's easy to imagine a solid top 3 team having that style and potentially even actually distancing themselves from the pack, but what do I know? Yeah, I even admitted to being butthurt still as how things were done weren't how things deserved to be. I admit I couldn't make it work with Katie and in building the system for our team, and that's failure on my part. But our team was going to have 2 roster moves at least, and Russ was trying to do the vitality thing behind the curtains, so figuring out each step to take and making 4 to 5 parties be satisfied takes a lot of work. But I guess we aren't clicking mouse 1 or being seen by Russ, we're lazy. True. The yelling was one-sided, and as I mentioned, I was just arriving. I don't even remember the reason for the argument, couldn't care less. My point was how we were never able to move on past that or even get you guys to talk, and the reasons were always different, including going to personal levels. And it was also true. It probably was just with Finn. This is again talking about the meeting that he had. I asked the FaZe guys where Russ was, as Anir was worried as he had disappeared for hours. But as I told Russ in private today, I also had talked to Finn later on that night, and as for being an IGL, what does that matter? For him to be an IGL, he has to be saying what's going on, and the bigger point, he was once again with FaZe in our eyes, as Marex and I were left in the lobby waiting for him. It's just not very leadership worthy. True. It sucks I found out that in Brazil after being assured everything was fine from the org and being blindsided by someone I trust, but that's just me being ooey gooey friendly. I should have known better. I mean, what do I know? If only I didn't have 24 years of CS experience and a few trophies and championship teams under my belts, along with having coached, played, and not only hired but been fired by Russ over the last decade. I'll let you know what I think of your scouting on the next roster move. I'm not lying. This is just another example of a lack of perspective from Russ. And sure, it might have been Brokey instead of Carrigan, referring to the NBA night out. But when that point is, when the only activity this team does together is watch basketball and play basketball, and in our discussion that there's a game, he somehow ends up going with FaZe with our manager having to pay, I just find it funny. It was more of an example instead of being a likely move, referring to the Donk transfer. When brought up, it was insta-shutdown, and I'll just say the reasons and concerns weren't only English. Swanee, who posts a lot on Reddit, comes in and was like, you were specifically asked not to touch the CS tactical aspect. How do you appoint a coach and tell him not to be tactically involved? Another joke of Steve Classic and mismanagement, I guess. And look, that is the problem. Like, when you bring in a coach, there has to be a mandate where they can essentially say to the players and the in-game leader, no, we need to do it this way. I said we're doing it this way. I believe this is the best way. You need to get on board with the system. And it just ultimately never, that's just not how it works in a lot of CS teams. Team Liquid have got an ongoing, persistent problem as I see it, because no matter where you stand on the he said, she said of this, it's very clear there is one person pulling the strings at Team Liquid, and it is Twists. And to go from Elige, where it was always Elige pulling the strings at Liquid, to then go and you let Elige go to Complexity, finally put an end to that, even though Elige is like this iconic Team Liquid player. You've been through thick and thin with him, even has a small piece of equity in the organization. You then do all of this with Twists, and now you're in the same problem. And prior to Twists, let's not forget, it was Yakindar. Yakindar got to essentially make recommendations, build a roster. Joker Steve just went along with it. Players like Wind Waker, that should never have represented fucking Team Liquid, ending up just getting to be part of this illustrious organization on, as far as I can tell, your kind are vibing with them in fucking Face It games or whatever the fuck. That can't be the metric by which you do scouting. And on that note, I'll say that there's just no fucking bigger org failing as much when it comes to scouting and recruitment as Team Liquid. It's crazy how far behind they are. You look at what like Team Spirit have done with the talent they've been able to unearth, even signing 10-year-olds now, which is fucking ridiculous. But, you know, and you look at some of the other orgs like, I mean, let's say Gamer Legion, how they've been able to min-max, and Heroic, how they've built not one, not two, but now 3 potentially tier 1 rosters, doing it with just good scouting. What the fuck are Team Liquid doing? Like, there's talent out there that you can get. You don't even need to overspend. And yet, I know for a fact, in 2024, you were going to roll the dice on a Breezy and Cirque fucking run back. That's how far removed they are. And until Team Liquid get rid of Joker Steve and bring in somebody that's actually competent and attuned to scouting and actually knows what talent is out there, instead of like just listening to the whims of whichever star player is pulling his fucking reins at any moment in time, Team Liquid are going to fail. And Anir, who, by the way, I know and like and have a lot of respect for, and congratulations on the marriage, Mazel Tov, Shalom, all of that stuff. You know, you can't just say, oh, he only started the job in August and we don't really know where we are right now. Unfortunately, the problem with Counter-Strike and esports in general is it's today. It's got to be today. You are going to get a very limited amount of time. And when you're at an organization like Team Liquid, you have got to you've got to do it quick. And August, we're now in February of 2025. There hasn't been any appreciable improvement, really. They had a one little kind of thing where, you know, Zews was talking about it. You had some fucking respite on the old lineup. With this new lineup, it just hasn't really got going yet, and it needs to. And if it's not going to happen, then you need to look at what you can do to improvement. It would be the biggest fumble of Team Liquid's career if they didn't go and get Shuhei. If G2 are fucking umming and ahhing and thinking keeping Snacks is a good fucking call, if they want to do that, then Team Liquid has got to fucking usurp that transfer and fucking bring them into the organization. You are going to be given very few opportunities by your competitors to actually make moves that you will look back and say, that is a historic sea change, and every other org around us fucking fumbled it. Mouse have fumbled it, in my opinion, by letting Shuhei go. By the way, we already have seen, you know, what they didn't look gangbusters with the stand-in. I know it's only a stand-in from the academy or whatever. I'm telling you, that's destined for fucking rack and ruin. And Jimmy's interview afterwards about, oh yeah, actually we didn't like Shuei's calling. If that's true, you're a dickhead. That's mental to say that in the aftermath. Just say it's a personal problem, because everybody knows behind the scenes it was a personal problem. It was something that was deemed to be so far beyond the pale. You had to cut him immediately because the rest of the team were gonna fucking riot. So, you know, but the problem is this, right? If I'm Team Liquid, I am left with a choice. I can listen to Twists and don't worry, boss, I'm going to get it. I'll get it, boss. I'll get it, boss. I'm going to become the great leader. I'm going to become a great tactician. Don't you worry. Or I can go and get someone who's proven it already, cut a player that has been in exactly like a 1.0 rating over his entire time in Team Liquid, and bring in a player who, by the way, is on a 1 point rating as well, or thereabouts, get a generational talent IGL, get my fragger back to fragging. Like, it's just a no-brainer. And if you miss it and you let G2 get that, the level up G2 are going to get by cutting Snacks and bringing in Shuhei is fucking crazy. And Team Liquid, you can't keep letting these teams leapfrog above you because Joker Steve is on some other fucking DMT trip, fucking thinking to himself, but what if we did Cirque and Breezy? It is the only way. You can't do it. It's madness. Now, in the aftermath of all the drama, and obviously Zeus has walked it back a little bit there. And yeah, like, you know, look, let's just all have a gentleman's agreement. Let's not be bringing our wives and partners into any of this shit anyway. Let's not do that. Right? It doesn't have to get crazy. We can all be civilized. What I was surprised by was Victor came out, the CEO or co-CEO, because that's what we do these days. We do co-CEOs. But obviously, Victor, the founder of Team Liquid, he came out and addressed everything that had come tumbling out of the interview, probably making it, you know, a super impactful thing that's occurred. He said, a brief note to the CS community. I'm obviously really sad to hear and read all the things Zeus said about Twist yesterday. It's pointless to get into a back and forth on details, but let's make a few things clear. Most of this is just roster stuff, which inherently comes down to flawed personal perspectives. And as long as we are dealing with individuals who cannot accept their own mistakes, the objectivity will be far from present. The perspectives from others, including mine, will be 180 degrees opposite on some of these points. In other words, what Victor has done there is to essentially back up Twists and to push back a little bit on the community criticism he was getting. Because if you go and read the Reddit thread, a lot of people are just kind of like, yeah, well, sounds like Twists is difficult. I'm going to add, when I think we just need to learn that in all but the most exceptional of circumstances, maybe NA and European players maybe they just can't mix, maybe they can't play with each other. Maybe there's like some fundamental disconnect in philosophies. I don't know. It just seems to be like such a recipe for disaster over and over and over and over again. I watched with absolute fucking despair when it was like Elige in like his first week in phase goes, yeah, I'm going to make some changes to the comms. Like, no, not an NA player changing comms. He's lit. Carrigan, could you shout he's lit more in a game, right? One hit. Chat, is this real? Right. And then, now, Elige, by the way, is now calling on the CT sides. So an NA player has spent exactly like a month in an org. Right? He's working with a GOAT contender for IGL. Many people, by the way, now think he's surpassed Glaive even if he doesn't have the rings. And yet Elige is thinking, can I call some of these sides? Like, what's it going to take? Guys, like, what is wrong with NA? Like, what is fucking wrong with NA? Like, what? So they all want to fucking do it their way or no way at all. It's just mental. And when their way doesn't work, it's never on them. So anyway, but I will say this. Maybe Victor didn't have to get involved. But ultimately what he's done here is he's backed Russ to the hilt, which is in line with what Team Liquid do with whichever fucking star player is pulling the strings. Because as I said, Joker Steve does nothing. And for Victor not to fire Joker Steve, at this point, it is just a Nepo hire or you know, whatever you might want to call it. It's a fucking... I mean, like, I have never seen a more inept person in a job maintain their job for as long as Joker Steve has. And it's like, it must just be like he has some equity or something and you can't fire him or... Because there's no justification for his fucking... You know, him keeping his job. But anyway... He's essentially implying Zeus is the fuck up, which isn't great. You know, if you're like, well, I was thinking about hiring Zeus, but like a CEO of one of the most successful esports organizations in history has said that actually he couldn't accept his own mistakes and isn't being objective. Okay. 2, there is no doubt, no question that Twists paid for those NBA tickets himself. It didn't or suggest anything else is really not okay. So this NBA ticket story is just a huge bone of contention. As I said, apparently it was like he asked the manager to pay for it or something, and it's like, no, he did. I couldn't give a fuck about any of this. This is the kind of like low-level fucking drama. Like, save that shit for Discord and DMs, guys. It's just pathetic. 3, while Russell has the experience and credibility to be a valued voice at Liquid, he is not the one deciding or signing contracts. Now, look, I'll also just say I know enough about how Liquid works to know that this is kind of one of those half-truths that it's like, yes, the final decision may not be his technically, but the way Liquid work is whoever their fucking current, you know, sacred cow is, that's who they are going to go to and consult with and so, you know, yeah, okay. We believe he has it in him to be a great IGL. that Shuei deal doesn't look very good right now. It will take some time for him to perfect this craft, but he has what it takes to succeed. An incredibly keen eye for the game and a level of care for his teammates that is crucial for leadership. Those, by the way, are about 2 of the 100 qualities you need to be a good IGL. Yeah, there you go. It doesn't look like Shuei's going to Team Liquid. That's going to go down as a massive fumble, especially if he goes to G2. G2 start clicking and start banging everyone out. Because where Team Liquid are right now, they can't afford another team to be out there improving. This is not, I mean, let's just actually take a look. They're ranked number 9 currently. Let's do the global Valve ranking, actually. Where are they? Yeah, 10 in the all-important VRS. But that just doesn't tell the full story when you look at their results and kind of, how they did at Katowice. They lost to the Mongols. Now, look, I know the Mongols won today on the stage. I told you, Mongols have turned the corner in terms of being choke artists, and they're going to get, the major, maybe the lights were a little bit too bright. That's a different ballpark, but they're just doing Mongols things. But for Team Liquid to be losing to Mongols, and by the way, in a series where, what did I tell you about Nerds? People were going, the raw cells were out. Nerds isn't going to he's not the answer. You got too many passive players. He's dropped 60 frags in 3 maps in MR12 and fucking lost the series. This is not about firepower. Ultimate, by the way, was terrible in this series as well. Made a number of high-profile mistakes that he just can't keep getting away with at this level. And, ultimately, lol, he's kind of in that weird Brokey zone, except he's probably a worse version of Brokey in the sense that the fragging output is far, far less, and the mistakes are far, far more. But this is just so unacceptable for the aspirations for where you want to be. And unfortunately, these types of results, where you're finishing 9th to 12th at Katowice, you don't get many of these. Even if you are a new IGL with who cares about his players, I'll come here and love you, come here, don't worry, it's gonna be okay. None of that matters. If all you're really good at is consoling people when they fucking lose, that means you're losing all the time. I don't know it's a performance-based industry. And it's just so crazy to me because you can see exactly the twist-shaped hole that could be filled if you just take Justin out. People are going to say, you're a generational hater of fucking JKS. But it's no, it's not even about that at this point. It's that you've got an opportunity to get a fucking IGL talent that will improve your team. It's just as simple as that. If you're finishing below fucking Gamer Legion and Eternal Fire at S-tier events, and by the way, I think Eternal Fire are a better team than Team Liquid right now. The addition of Jota it puts them over the top. They had a bad day at the office today, but I think unfortunately this Liquid team, they're going to be in the hurt locker for 2025. And if we have to fucking wait and hope that Twist somehow does reach his final form of being Carrigan Light, then if that's what it's going to take for Team Liquid to have deep runs at tournaments and genuinely challenge for trophies, then I don't think we're seeing that this year. I agree with Zeus in that regard. It might have come from a place of absolute ass pain, butthurt, having to get stuff off my chest, pissed off about the way things went down. I'd have been pissed off. But ultimately, he's got a point. Now, he shouldn't have aired all the other dirty laundry, but ultimately, I think he had a point. And all of the drama that subsequently come from it, don't let it distract you from the fact that fucking Joker Steve somehow still has a job.